look at the end of the last game, Eric obviously come off an injury. Did you feel like, he was still trying to get his legs, and how much just playing that Wisconsin game is going to make him a little bit fresher, better coming into Purdue?
Yeah, no, I think, he got a game to get those legs underneath his belt. It's always tough when, you've missed, however many games and weeks he missed, and he literally, didn't practice. He did like some light, cardio stuff on the side that was more rehab. But for him to gut that out and play as many minutes as he did, I think was a good sign. And now it's getting, more and more acclimated to just game shape and timing. But I think for being off as long as he was, he did a really good job of being able to gut it out and being productive. And I think everybody saw when we have a Eric on the floor, it makes a world of difference on both sides of the ball. So we're happy to have him back.
Timing's going to be better, right? I mean, you face a Purdue team that's got more size than most.
Yeah, no, you have to. I mean, you look at their Ohio State game. I think Edey played 11-30 total, and it was because, foul trouble. And you have to have at least 2, maybe 3 bodies that are able to sub in there in case a guy gets an early foul. So, for depth purposes alone. But then I think he has a good understanding of how to guard, both him and Williams, which is what we'll need.
Can you, obviously you can't make somebody big. You can't bring in a 6'10", 250-pound guy. What can you do to make current players more physical? I mean, how do you try to get them, up to the Big Ten physicality of it during a year where you don't want to beat them up too much?
Right. I think a big piece of that is you show them on film. You talk about, like, you can't give an inch. And we just talk about that all the time, that, like, the physicality piece is not changing. And if you want to, for the young guys, if you want to continue to play and get minutes, like, it's a non-negotiable. And for guys that are older, if you want to be productive and produce and help us win and play at the next level, like, this isn't going anywhere. It's a non-negotiable. So I think it's more of just, almost enforcing that you have to change. Like, it's not a give or take. This is what it is, especially at this level. And then in practice, you just, again, you coach it. Playing through a pad. Obviously you can't go body on body, but there's stuff you can do with a pad. But just the reality of, like, this is how this league is, and if you can't embrace that, it's going to be a tough time for you.
Is there a more Big Ten team than Purdue this year? I watched that game against Iowa, and they're big. They're just kind of an old-fashioned Big Ten team.
Yeah, and they're also, they have so many tools. I mean, when you can start, 2 potential pros, you can start and have a all-team, all first-team preseason come off the bench, who's arguably your most productive big. Jaden Ivey didn't start the last 2 games. You could bring him off the bench. You're bringing Caleb, who's a top 100 player, off the bench. It's scary, their depth that they have. And it's good depth. Some teams have depth in its bodies, and you're like, okay, there's a little bit of drop-off when they go to the bench, like solid, but a little bit of drop-off. When they go to the bench, there's almost no drop-off. And in some cases, it's more firepower. So they've done a great job just with their roster, with how they've managed it. It's a tough challenge because they've surrounded their bigs with all playmakers or guys that can at least shoot. So it's hard to key in, even Eric Hunter, who's, quote unquote, maybe not as much as a shooter as some of those other guys. He does other things well, and he's experienced veteran player. So, there's a reason why they're number 1 offensive team in the country.
Is there a trick to, they're so physical, to just, maybe let's not foul out here. Like, is there a line there?
I think the hardest thing is, and it's hard for refs to call it. And I think some of it just depends on how the game's being called. Sometimes a game, it might be called tighter. Well, man, it's going to be really tough. I don't care what team you have out there. It's going to be tough for anybody in the league if it's called tight. If it's a little bit looser, then it's gonna be a little bit easier. There's going to be a little bit give and take. So I think so much of it depends on that whistle, especially early, and kind of how that game's called. Other than that, you know, it's such a unique cover, you know. And some of it's not, you know, Edey's fault. He's so big that, like, you know, everybody talks about his elbows with him and Kofi, but, like, their elbows, their natural movement is going to be at a player's head just because of the size differential. So there's stuff like that you're trying to negotiate and navigate, and you're trying to tell our guys you're going to have to stick your nose in there. You're probably going to get popped 1 or 2 times, and, hey, they might not call it. You just try to do the best you can doing your work early, I think, more than not. I think, you know, going back to when they had Hammonds and Haas and Harms, the good thing is it's not the first time, you know, I've seen it or had to go up against it or prep for it. But so much of it is you got to do your work early, and you can't let them bury you deep. If they bury you deep, there's nothing you can do.
Will a referee ever tell you before the game, hey, we're calling everything, or we're gonna let them play tonight? I mean, is that a part of the conversation, or do you not know until the first 3 minutes?
Yeah, no, you don't know until the flow of it. And sometimes I don't know. Maybe they don't know either. You know, I just think it's a rhythm thing. You know, but yeah, you don't. That's why I told our guys for this game in Illinois, you know, you got to have a defensive rhythm to you, and you got to be able to adjust. I think that's the biggest key. Is, you know, you could be hard-headed defensively all you want, but if a game's being called tight and you continue to put hands on guys, I don't care if you're a perimeter or post, that's on you. You know, because they're going to tell you, the refs are going to tell you early, you know, how this thing's going to be played, and then you've got to be able to adjust to how it's being called. And then with those adjustments, do your best within our scheme to be successful. But yeah, no, it'll pan out in probably the first 4 minutes. You'll get a pretty good idea of, like, okay, here's how this thing's going to be called.
Not a lot of teams will recruit 7-foot-plus guys because of the style of play, and he's able to play 2 different styles. You know, he has the big guys, and then obviously Jaden Ivey and some of the other guys that come through there.
Yep.
Is that a recruiting preference to you, that you maybe not go that big, you know, and Matt Painter does it better than anybody?
Yeah, I think, you know, that's kind of a niche that they've had, and it's worked for them. They're able now to really recruit to it. I'm sure they get calls and get the heads up on kids that are, you know, those 7 feet guys, because they've had success, as they should. So it's kind of like their niche. I think for all of us, you know, you just want really good players that fit what you do. So they're just hard to find. I think that's why so many teams have kind of gone away from it, because they're not there's a dime a dozen. And so for the majority of us, the opportunity to get an Edey or somebody of that size it's small. So now you're looking more to get like an Eric or an EJ Liddell or somebody that's more, you know, more doable, more realistic. But yeah, I think all of us would take, you know, somebody that can play like that and make that big of a difference. And they've done a good job. I think, you know, people will probably say, well, why won't you play them together? I think now that's a different story. I think, you know, from my perspective, that's almost impossible. You know, cause the biggest thing is transition defense. You know, that shot goes up. Now you're trying to scramble, and you can't. The versatility, you're not going to get like on like in transition. Now all of a sudden your defense is set, and you've got weird matchups. And then even now it's like, you know, Jamo at the 4. It's hard to play a guy that's a traditional 5 now at the 4. Whereas back in the day, even when I played, it was more doable. So, you know, I think that's the unique challenge that they have. And any team that has, you know, those multiple bigs that are both really good, it's like, how do you work them to maximize them, you know, and get them on the floor, but at the same time, you got to be able to defensively do it.
Well, the one kid, I always forget his name, he's like an NBA player. He's a great passer, so that totally changes things too, doesn't it, when he's on the floor?
Yeah.
It's not like he's just posting up.
Yeah, I think anytime you can get a big that you can kind of play through and you can facilitate, it does make it, because now your 5-man has to come up the floor. They can't just sit in the paint. And so, yeah, mobile bigs that can dribble, pass, and shoot, those are premium for a lot of people. You don't come across them too often.
Can you make teams chase you sometimes, those big teams? You know, one of the things we see now, maybe Michigan, you know, with Beeline, et cetera. Can you get in a matchup and turn it into, which we never used to see, where the small team can have an advantage if you take a lead and you can wear guys out, if you can run them around and make threes with the shot clock, or is that almost impossible to do?
No. I think it's very doable. I think you know, Ohio State does a pretty decent job of it in a way. No, I think that's the one thing with what Trayton hopefully can bring. You know, if he, I think it was it was last game versus Ohio State, so I kind of jumped him for not shooting a couple plays that we had diagrammed, because that's your advantage, dude. When you're in the game, your advantage, you're gonna, even though you're a 4, they're gonna probably put their 5 on you, especially if JMO's out there. And so your advantage is to now do exactly that, is to play in space. Can you move around? Can you get a big, having to guard pick and pops and make that other team have to make a defensive adjustment to you because you're quote unquote kind of small. So definitely, I think the what it always comes down to is the defensive end. If you go small ball, like Golden State goes small ball, well, Draymond's a monster defensively, so they can get away with it. Now it's like, okay, you'd love to do it because that's your advantage. Like, we're not going to have an Edey or maybe even a Williams. So it's like, if we go small, now can we make up for it defensively, Or if not, then you better hope you're making every single 3 and just go 3 for 2s, But that's the kind of the fun game within the game is, they obviously have a size advantage. How can you flip it and make it an advantage on your end?
Is it kind of cool though, Ben, over the years that, you used to see roster construction where when you play, you get so many guards and then you quit recruiting guards and then you get so many guys 6'8", and then you can try to get a couple of 7-footers. And the small guy, you can have 10 guards on a roster and be a really good team. Has that been good for basketball?
No, I think it has. I think I enjoy it. I think the players enjoy playing that way. I think the fans enjoy it because it's faster. You see more up-tempo. You obviously see more pick and rolls. You see more drives. You see more just threes, more transition because you got quicker, smaller guys out there. You got versatility. I think that's a lot, like I was in the Big East, that's a lot kind of what the Big East is, a little bit smaller league, where their threes in this league really are 4s there. It's kind of just more hybrid. You look at Villanova, and Villanova's never had, or rarely had, true like size at the 5 spot. They've always kind of had that, 6'7", 6'8", but they can play the 5, play the 4. I think versatility is huge. I think, I love versatile guys, but we're saying that if you can get a stud, that's a traditional 5. You take the best player, and just you kind of figure it out.
With Matt, you and he and some other guys are one of the few that are coaching your alma maters. Have you talked to him about that, and what does that mean? Like, when you see that and have so much success at his alma mater?
Yeah, no, I think he's obviously done a really good job of kind of embodying Purdue. I know he was really close to Coach Katie, and I think the torch has been passed, and Matt's carried it and gone above and beyond. And I think, he's embraced the history of it, the tradition. I'm sure, the fan base, obviously, but, he just understands what Purdue basketball is, and I think he's done an unbelievable job of just continuing that. Their great tradition that they have there, and I think a lot of that is because he's got a lot of pride in it. Former player, played there and doesn't want to see it stray, and they got it rolling, and they've got their niche, and they're just gonna keep it going, I'm sure, and now it's our job to kind of use a little bit of their blueprint in terms of how you sustain it. I think that's always the goal for everybody here is. You're hopefully going to get it to a level where it's really good. Now, how do you keep it there so you don't have a drop off? And they've done a really good job of being able to keep it there.
All right. Thanks, Coach.
All right, thank you.